Adjourned meeting for Monday, December 18th, 2006 to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call, Tracy, please.
Arbogast.
Here.
Garnis.
Here.
Gisselbeck.
Here.
Heller. Johnson.
Here.
Meisneimer.
Here.
Solberg. Walder.
Here.
Mr. Wilson is absent. Mrs. York.
Here.
Thank you.
Before I begin, I'd like to welcome one of our students from Lake Area Tech Environmental Studies who's attending our meeting tonight. So thank you for coming. We'll begin with agenda item number 1, which is a motion to approve the minutes of the City Council meeting held on December the 4th of 2006. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Alderman Heller. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Solberg. Any additions or corrections? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 2 is an application for a retail on-sale light wine license from Stone Oil Corporate Company Incorporated, and that is a new license. We'll begin with the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to the issue? If not, then we'll close the public hearing and move for council action. All the supporting documentation is in order. Could I have a motion to approve the application?
So moved.
So moved by Alderwoman Arbogast, seconded by Alderman Meisenheimer. Are there any questions or discussion on this? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item number 3 is the application for a transfer of retail on-off sale liquor license from Sharkey's Incorporated to Dakota Bank, and this will be held as an inactive license. And we'll begin with the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to the issue? If not, I'll close the public hearing and go to council action. All the supporting documentation is in order. Is there a motion to approve the transfer? So moved by Alderman Solberg. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Alderwoman Walder. Any questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item number 4 is the application for renewal of a retail on-off sale liquor license from Dakota Bank to be held as an inactive license. I'll begin with the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to the issue on the renewal? If not, I'll close the public hearing and go to council action. Is there a motion to approve the renewal?
So moved.
So moved by Alderman Solberg. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderwoman York. Any questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item number 5 is consideration of bids received for patrol cars for the police department. Chief Vitek? Captain Haig.
I drew the short straw.
Okay.
Good evening, thank you. Only one bid was received for purchase of 2007 model patrol cars. That was received from Watertown Ford and Chrysler. The bid per vehicle was $21,687. The total bid package is for $86,748. The alternative that we have is possibly under a state contract purchase. This current state contract price per car is $21,060. And I guess the short of it is the total difference between 4 cars purchased locally or under state bid is $2,508. The state bid is actually cheaper than the local bid, the state contract. It's always been our preference to support our local merchants. They're the ones that support us with their tax dollars, but this is a higher figure than we've seen in recent years, or a higher difference. And this amount of money, $2,508 difference, would buy us a lot of equipment to put in those cars. So we're asking for a little guidance and direction from the council on which way to proceed with that.
I'll let the council come up with the motion as to how they'd like to proceed. Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we take the state bid.
There's a motion to accept the state bid. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Meisenheimer. Any discussion?
Yes, give us the difference in price again.
Okay, the total difference in price between Watertown Ford and the state contract is $2,508. That's the total difference. It amounts to $627 per car.
Any other questions or comment from the council members? Alderwoman York, you have any comment? None?
This is kind of a tough call.
It is.
I really believe in supporting our local dealers. And $2,508 on a $86,748 purchase. You know, it's hard to know what to do.
I do agree with that. I think if we can possibly do it locally, that's what we need to do.
I concur with both of you, ladies, and hope that we can find our way around the $2,500 and get to a local bid.
I would like to make a substitute motion that we purchase the cars locally.
Okay, there's been a substitute motion made to purchase the cars locally by Alderman Garnos. Was there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Heller. All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Okay, on the substitute motion to purchase the 4 Crown Vics from Watertown Ford, begin with Mrs. York. Yes. Mrs. Arbogast,
Yes?
Mr. Garnis,
Yes?
Mr. Gisselbeck,
No.
Mr. Heller,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Meisneimer,
No.
Mr. Solberg, Mrs. Walder.
Yes.
Count 7 votes in favor, 2 opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 7 is the budget amendments for 2006 city budget. Whoops, excuse me, sorry. Agenda item number 6 is the law enforcement facility needs report by Leslie Hanson. I'm very sorry, I overlooked that. Freudian slip, thank you.
I know I screwed it up because, I mean, I'm good because my. Okay, all right. We have a whole committee here, so I'm hoping that the rest can come up. This was a true committee, Mayor Fox, and I want to thank you for allowing us to be able to report tonight. This opportunity was one that the mayor approached us on in the summer and asked if we would be willing, as a community group, to take a look at our law enforcement facility as well as our judicial facilities to make sure they're meeting the needs of our community. And so at the time I kept thinking, all right, that sounds like an interesting committee. And there were some council members on there, some commissioners on there, and I'll show you the entire makeup of the committee. But it was well worth our time. And I really want to thank Police Chief Vitek, Sheriff Olson, Jim Sutton, Pam Kwasniewski, Tracy Swenson, Steve Kelson, the Honorable Judge Tim, and I've probably forgotten others, for meeting with us during this process. We began in September, and we're reporting to you today the finals of our study. I also want to commend the City Council. I want to commend the County Commissioners for the upkeep of our facilities, because I'm in the schools, and sometimes we make things look so good that, you know, when you really get into it, it doesn't look so good on the inside. So we're going to show you some things tonight, and I think the upkeep and everything has been very good, but I think the needs of our community is going to come through tonight. I'm also thankful to our community ancestors who had forethought to do these things many, many years ago, to create a detention center and to build a courthouse that met the needs between 30 to 70 years ago when those buildings were built. So if I could begin, I'll just tell you about our committee. Maybe, there we go. The purpose of the Citizens Committee was to review the current law enforcement and judicial facilities to determine if the current facilities meet today's needs, especially with our growing community and the growing needs of our community. Then our other purpose was to report those findings to the City Council, which we're doing tonight, and the County Commissioners, which we'll be doing tomorrow morning upon completion of the task. The members of the committee you can see before you. This is where you have a true committee. I emailed everybody and I gave them our findings, and I said, okay, if anybody wants to meet and put this report together, here's when we're going to meet. And 6 people showed up, which usually when it's time to present, everybody disappears, but not this committee. So I just want to commend the committee. I've gotten to know many of them in different capacities, and I do think you have very valuable committee members as a part of this. We're going to continue. I've got different people that will be coming up and sharing different parts of this presentation, so we'll continue with actually what we found when we went into the detention center and also the judicial system at the courthouse.
Good evening. I'm Greg Mogg from the committee. First on the slide here that you have here, it shows all the different departments and agencies that are housed in the detention center. As you can see, the numbers behind them in the parentheses, like behind the sheriff's department says 10 and then 8, that's the number of staff or personnel that they have in the department right now, which is much larger in most cases than they had back in 1974 when the facility was built. All of them, especially the police department, they are having space problems for their personnel. But I'm going to let Terry Satterley elaborate on that here in a little bit. Go ahead, Leslie. I'm going to talk a little bit about the jail. Jail is a major component of the facility when it was built in 1974. Takes up a large amount of space on the first floor or the upper floor of the detention center. It was built using probably the, shall we say, the theory or the idea of incarceration at that time, which is a linear model, which means it was built like a dormitory. You got your holding cells on each side of a long aisle or hallway that provides access to each of the cells. Now at that time, again, that was probably considered state of the art for incarceration, but of course those ideas have changed and evolved since then. It originally was designed for 38 inmates. Over the years, the county has done some remodeling on there, and now they've increased it to 70 inmates can be held in there at one time. Of course, the problems that they run into is they have, in many cases, they have more than 70 individuals incarcerated in the facility at one time. You've got your weekend, the work release people, you've got inmates coming from other counties. Since our jail is kind of a regional facility, we have contracts to take some prisoners from other counties. And so, for example, when we were there, there was 76 inmates in the facility when we took the tour. And I believe it doesn't say on there, but while we were taking the tour, there was actually cots put up in the, I guess you'd call it the library resource recreation room downstairs, and that's where they were having some of the overflow inmates stay and sleep, was in that facility. I guess the other thing in here was the talking about the juveniles. Back when this facility was first built, there was no requirements or laws or regulations that basically dealt with juveniles in the facility. Of course, now that has changed. At this point, there's the requirement that was federal requirements that were passed back in 2003 that said you're supposed to be sight and sound separated from any adult inmates. In fact, according to the sheriff Olson there, you're actually supposed to house them in a completely separate facility under the original law, but that has been relaxed some, and so our jail happens to meet it through what's called a co-location facility, I believe it is, which means they're sight and sound separated, and that was all came about when they added the extra addition onto the facility. I'm not sure if that was in the 90s or something like that. But the other issue that isn't up there that I think should be brought up is the plumbing in the jail facility. I'm not sure if you're all aware of it, but of course, over the years here, according to Sheriff Olson again, back when they first built the facility, prisoners' conduct and behavior was a little more civilized. over the years now, especially probably over the last 7 to 10 years, prisoners decided they're going to, oh, I don't know, shall we say get revenge or get back at the system. So they like to do things like stuff things down, plug the toilets up, basically, plug the plumbing up. And that creates a problem because then you get an overflowage, which creates a mess and unsanitary conditions, not only in the jail facility, but also downstairs in the lower level of the facility. Some of the offices down there are, well, let's just say they're a mess. They come in and they've got raw sewage on the desks, on the floors. It's just not a healthy place for those individuals to work or good for office space. So that was some of the issues that I saw when we were doing the tour there. The other two issues here, the expanded community area needs to be utilized for the spaces and the advanced technology. Mr. Satterley is going to elaborate on those issues.
Good evening. My name is Terry Satterley, and as we were given a tour of the facility and talking with both the sheriff and the police chief and their staff, several things I noticed that I just wanted to comment briefly on tonight. The first thing that I noticed was the evidence room, where both from my own observations and from talking with the staff, there's been sewage backup problems and water contamination problems in the evidence room. Obviously, this is a critical situation because any contamination of the evidence could and probably would affect prosecution, successful prosecution in cases. Law enforcement has a responsibility to collect evidence and to maintain its condition until presentation in court. And again, I think this was a very serious situation in that particular part of the center. As we were showing the communications center, it's pretty clear that Watertown, Cottington County becoming a regional 911 center, and that's probably going to continue to grow. And as that need grows, there's going to be a need to expand the size of the working area for the operators and their equipment as more and more counties are added. It looks to me like they're just about wall to wall right now with what they're having to deal with. The other thing I noticed was that in the basement was the telephone, the 911 system, and the communications equipment. That was one of the first things Grand Forks, North Dakota learned in their flood up there, was that they had their equipment in the basement. Right off the bat, they lost their 911 service and their emergency communications right when they needed it the most. We looked at the interview rooms that are used for both interviewing and interrogating suspects and interviewing crime victims. I've done interviews in broom closets, and I can tell you it's not conducive to good work. It's not a comfortable situation for the public, and that's really who this facility is built to serve. There's a need for privacy. There's a need for more room if you've got multiple victims or if you've got multiple suspects. That separation is very important in criminal investigations. And right now, it looks to me like they're just maxed out. They just don't have any room to expand. The entrance of the PD kind of struck me. I was in law enforcement for 30 years, and I was around when they were building these facilities around the country in the 70s, and they were building them like bunkers. And if you walk into the Watertown PD or the Huron PD, you run right into that bunker-type setting with the thick glass. And in talking with the staff, oftentimes we've got citizens who have come into the police department with law enforcement needs, and they're standing shoulder to shoulder with work release inmates who are getting ready to be checked in. They're standing shoulder to shoulder with other citizens, other people who are in there for whatever. There's no place to privately talk to the law enforcement officers about what your situation is. It would be like us standing in the lobby at the clinic talking with our doctor about our medical needs in front of all these strangers. It's just not an acceptable situation. And oftentimes I'm told that there are victims and suspects in there shoulder to shoulder. Again, not a very safe situation and not really good service, I don't think, to the public. There are no public bathrooms in that area. There's no public telephone for the public to use. The sheriff's office, excuse me, their lobby's a little bit better because their facility is newer, but it still lacks the public facilities such as bathrooms and telephone. And the last item I wanted to mention was the technology. As with most businesses, law enforcement is going to continue to rely more and more on technology. From what the setup they showed me, what they've got going on there, they've got just about every square inch of space they can use for equipment and electrical needs right now, I don't see any room there for expansion. And obviously, as time goes on, there's going to be a need for that. And for example, the wiring is inadequate and that needs to be addressed at some point. But these are just some of the highlights of the areas that we saw as we went through the facility. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm John Redlinger. I'd like to address a couple of things about our courthouse. Our courthouse is 77 years old, and that may come as a surprise to some in the room this evening, but as Leslie commented earlier, what a facility that's been well maintained over the years, and our forefathers deserve a lot of credit, as well as current commissioners for keeping that facility in the condition that it is in. Of course, back in 1929, safety and technology were issues that were not of a paramount concern. And as was shared with us during our tour of the courthouse, over the years, studies have been done on how to try create more space in that facility. But because of the construction of the structure with the load-bearing walls and that, the cost to remodel that facility was just exorbitant. And so over the years, that has not been done. We have some pictures of some of the accessibility issues. This is the witness chair next to where the judge is seated in the main courtroom. And you can see there's 2 steps up to that chair. As you walk through the courthouse, there's many different elevations. So anybody that's in a wheelchair or has physical challenges has a very difficult time negotiating all these various elevations in that facility. The next slide shows technology. As we all know, and just like the equipment we're using tonight, technology has come a long way in our society. And our courthouse, unfortunately, is just not equipped to handle technology. It takes a lot of extra work, if you will, to set the courtroom up for certain cases that require technology. And you can see in the picture here, they've brought in a portable screen, and they've got some computers here and there, and they're making do with what they have. I'm going to call on Lee Schoenbeck now, a local attorney, who's going to talk about privacy and space issues that are present in the courthouse.
Thank you. I've appreciated the opportunity to be a part of this committee. You know, you don't wake up in the morning and say, boy, I can hardly wait to go use the courthouse or the jail. These are community infrastructure issues that you have to have as part of a progressive community, but it's not something you have a big constituency that's looking for the opportunity to utilize them, except when they do, they want them to work. You've got some examples here, privacy and space, for example. If you were a rape victim or your family member was a rape victim or a victim of domestic violence, think about how you feel about having them sitting out in the hallway waiting to go into the courtroom where the defendant is also going to be coming through, and worse yet, probably the defendant's family. This courthouse has almost no space for people to meet with clients or for the state's attorney to have victims or people like that set off aside like most of the courthouses, at least that I've had the opportunity to operate in, do. Now, the reason is, it's just so we're clear, it's because in 1929, they probably didn't have that big of a caseload. Watertown wasn't the economic center for the region that it is today. The population, I'm not sure what it was 77 years ago, but it's a lot smaller than it is now. And so what's happened is you've built an economic base, you built a population base, you've got economic activity going on, there are more things going through the courthouse. There are more people. If you go up there on court day, the hallway is going to be packed with people because there isn't any place else to put them. In fact, the handicap accessibility issue is kind of interesting because one of the places you'll meet with your clients, if you want privacy, is on the landings between the 2 levels. They're pretty good sized landings they built in 1929, and it is a place you can be in a corner and talk to your client. But of course, if your client's in a wheelchair, that would take a little bit of lifting. The point is that the facilities today don't have the privacy and space that you would expect for a community that's a growing community like Watertown and the kind of services we should deliver. I think you have one more. And the other point is safety. I think you can all understand when you talk about the domestic violence, the family law cases, those types of things, and in the criminal setting. But I mean, that's a volatile situation to start with. But you know, there are also concerns about, and it's happened in other places. It's happened in other places in South Dakota. People that can't control themselves, and this is a volatile setting. It's a place for them to act out, and we don't have the safety features that, for example, if you go to the courthouse in Sioux Falls, that you'll find if you walk in there. You don't have to have everything they've got, but one thing about it is that we should be looking to make the same kind of investment in this infrastructure that 70 some years ago people that were before us were willing to make in their community.
Now we come to our recommendations. I'd like to read this too, because I think it states very succinctly how we feel as a committee. Through our role as a citizens committee, we were to listen and observe whether or not the facilities we studied are adequate to meet today's needs. We unanimously agree that the present facilities at the detention center and the courthouse do not meet the present needs of this community, and further study should be undertaken. Specifically, we note we should include as many of the surrounding counties as possible. We should explore funding sources from the city, the county, the state, and the federal government. We should provide tours for the community and provide group presentations so citizens can fully understand the overcrowding and technology needs that are there in place. We should proceed in a conservative and responsible manner where all stakeholders will be optimally served. And we should also research the usage of the existing structures for other purposes. We now would ask for any questions you might have. I too, and I know the others on the committee too, would like to thank you for this opportunity to present our findings tonight. Believe me, this was a real eye-opening experience to be able to have this opportunity. And so, are there any questions?
I have one. On the first point, further study recommendations, include as many of the surrounding counties as possible? What would other counties, are you thinking of incorporating county government into a central, like Dual, Hamlin, whatever counties around us, have a central county entity, or what would they have to do with it?
Right now, Mrs. York, about 20% of our inmates that come to the detention center come from counties outside of Watertown.
You're speaking just of the detention center, not courthouse facilities.
Correct. We're becoming that regional center where people are coming.
It would be like the E911 center as well, emergency center.
And that could also serve juveniles. I mean, they're all having that, all the counties are suffering that same problem
That is
of what
correct.
to do with kids when they have to be retained. Okay.
Yep.
Got
Okay, the detention center is owned by the city or the county?
That is a county facility.
Okay, are we paying, does the city pay rent? Okay. And the other counties that are now using this facility, what do they pay, and does it break even at least?
They pay $50 a day for their inmate that they bring to Watertown.
And what is the cost?
I understand it, we can make money at $50.
And why is it a must that we keep prisoners from other counties?
Why do we keep prisoners?
From other counties?
I'm not sure that it's a must that we do, but Watertown has consistently been looked to by this area as a regional center, and I think we need to continue to be looked at that way in terms of our economy. You know, the services that we're talking about providing on fire and ambulance and the hospital, and we're a regional facility. If you do it correctly with a regional detention facility, you should be able to, as you said, have surrounding counties help pay for it. They have problems dealing with it themselves, and so we all need to do this in a collective fashion.
That's evolved over the years as these surrounding counties, their facilities have become inadequate. They've, it's just a natural thing to bring them to Watertown because we had the new facility. And so, and over the years, their population has grown and their criminal activity has also grown in the smaller communities. I know Hamlin, Clark, Dual. I think those are the three that bring them here. They may be others, but I think that's the three that do. Because Grant County has a new facility. Webster, I think, has a new facility. So it'd be those three counties that bring them here.
And I think also by having this regional concept is much more favorable for getting additional help money-wise to build that facility, so.
I know the night of our tour, as Greg mentioned, there were 72 inmates that evening in the detention center, and that was just a large number that I think just surprised all of us, that there would be that many people in that facility on a weeknight.
How many that would break the law?
I guess it would be my recommendation that we, assuming that the county commissioners react favorably as well, that we look at putting together a request for proposals that we could go out to. There are a lot of consulting firms out there. I would caution against going directly to an architectural firm. I think it's a multi-stage process. You have fulfilled the first step of that process and saved us a lot of money because we won't have to recreate that information. The next step, we take a look at what exactly it is and where we would build it, and then you would go to an architectural firm and on from there.
I concur, Brad. Having worked in that courthouse facility for 30-some years, a pretty good idea what you can and can't do over there. I think they filled it up with people that could be moved elsewhere out of the courthouse and still get their job done. There are some offices on that second floor that don't need to be there. In my opinion, there's some things that they can do with space, but if you're talking another courtroom or something like that, you're going to have to build a new facility. I'll tell you folks, that's one of the nicest facilities in the state of South Dakota as far as the courthouse is concerned. It is just almost as good today as it was in 1928 and 29. And let me tell you one more bit. We found some old brochures when they did an open house of the courthouse in 1929. They built that and furnished it for $750,000. In 1970 something or other, they spent $1 million renovating it with air conditioning and heating and that kind of thing. It's just an amazing facility, I think, with those skylights and all that kind of thing. That's all I got to say. Thanks. You did a good job, by the way.
Yes, I want to thank you very much, Leslie, and all the committee members for such a fine
I would
job.
also like to concur with Brad's on his point in getting a consultant who designs prisons on a regular basis. And I don't know if we're talking one facility or two facilities merged, but I happen to know someone who does that kind of work. And I'm not even mentioning his name.
Well, I hope not.
He had pointed out to me many of the problems that are created in a number of county jails around that just are overlooked by the architect, such as dangerous corners and places for prisoners to hide, et cetera. So go to her.
I would make a motion that with the commissioners' concurrence, hopefully tomorrow, that we would proceed with developing a request for proposal and begin the process of hiring a consultant.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Alderwoman Arbogast. Any further question or discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much, Leslie.
Thank you very
Great
much.
job. Thank you, all committee members. Moving on to agenda item number 7, the budget amendments, 2006 city budget. Tracy?
Thank you. I have two action items for you tonight. The first is the supplemental appropriation ordinance, and I spent a considerable amount of time at our last meeting reviewing this with you. I don't intend to do that again tonight, other than to point out a couple of changes that have been made to the ordinance in your packet. They are reflected in the copy that you have in your packet since first reading, and they relate to the very first items on the ordinance list of accounts to be supplemented. We've had a considerable amount of civil service activity relative to filling vacancies that we expect to have in come the first of the year, and so we've added some money to the civil service consulting account and the publication and recording fees. That has been increased by $4,000, and the police department supplement has also been increased to cover the cost of severance pay paid for a retiree earlier in the year. We had at one time hoped anyway that there would be vacancy savings sufficient to cover that. It's evident that that's not the case. So that has been, those first two accounts under the police department have been added since the first reading. So other than that, they are the same as we discussed 2 weeks ago. And I would certainly try to answer any questions you might have, but would ask for your approval.
Is there a motion then to approve the ordinance number 06-28? So moved by Alderman Garnos, seconded by Alderwoman Walder. Any further questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Tracy, and number B.
Thank you. And the second item is a one-step process to appropriate state and federal grants that were received during the year that were not anticipated in the original budget. You have a list of those in your agenda packet. All of those grants, and there are about 10 of them or so, relate to either the police department or the fire department. You can see that the police department had a $53,400 in grants that were not included in the original budget for 2006, and the fire department had an additional $49,164. So I would ask for your approval to appropriate those dollars.
Is there a motion then for the approval of the appropriations of state and federal grants? So moved by Alderman Heller, seconded by Alderman Giselbeck. Any further questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item number 8 is first reading of ordinance number 06-29, amending section 21.2302, parentheses 4, defining the voting requirements for matters decided upon by the Board of Adjustment. Stanton?
Thank you, Mayor. As the title you just read indicates, it's the ordinance that's before you would change the voting requirements for matters before the Board of Adjustment. Currently, our ordinance, as it indicates, requires a 3/4 vote by the Board of Adjustment to approve or grant a variance. And that 3/4 was based on state statute. That's what the requirement was until the legislature amended that during the 2006 session to now make it a 2/3 requirement for voting. Certainly, Watertown has the ability to be more stringent than state statute. We're a home rule community. We could keep it at 3/4, but the ordinance that's before you tonight is based on the Plan Commission's recommendation. They directed me to make that change and bring it forward for your consideration. So at second reading, I guess we'll see where it goes. Thanks.
Thank you, Stanton. Agenda item number 9 is the first reading of ordinance number 06-30, amending zoning district boundaries by rezoning Lot 1, Marvin Addition from R2 Single Family Attached Residential to C3 Highway Commercial District. Sarah?
Good evening. This property is owned by Vince Lubin of Lubin Properties, Inc., and it's about 3 acres. It's located in the northeast corner of the intersection of 19th Street Northeast and First Avenue Northeast. And any questions?
As it is, this is the first reading,
First
and
reading.
we'll be revisiting it in a few weeks.
Yep.
If not, then we'll move on to agenda item number 10. Again, the first reading of ordinance 06-31, amending Title 21, regulating zoning and subdivision. And Sarah?
Yes, this is a number of different items in this ordinance change, proposing to add several definitions for clinic, development lot agreement, office, and subdivision, since we don't have those in our definitions. Also, we want to add some special exceptions to the R1 single family residential district. We're going to add a special exception for office. In the C2 district, we're going to add special exceptions for assisted living centers and clinics. We're changing the height and placement table slightly, as it has to do with setbacks, and then removing some old language that is no longer needed.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Stanton, you would like to address the floor. Did you want to anything after this, or?
Yes, Mayor, thank you.
You're welcome.
In front of each of your spaces before tonight's meeting, I placed a copy of Ordinance 0632, and it's a companion to the one that Sarah just introduced. It's a revision to another provision in Title 21 that deals with non-conforming lots. And as most of you know, we've visited about this issue before. The section that's going to be amended is 210402. As most of you know, the history of Watertown includes platted lots that in a lot of cases are 25 or 50 feet in width, and those dimensions are too small for nearly every zoning district in Watertown. As such, a lot of buildings that you see are a combination of several small lots. Give you, for instance, Shopco, for example, is situated on more than a couple dozen lots that when you add them all up, that makes the Shopco property. But individually, they're 25-foot lots, and they're a very small dimension. And as currently written, the ordinance that's before you tonight places restrictions on lots that don't comply with those minimum requirements of the zoning district. I'll give you for example, at Lake Compesca, land that was annexed into the city in the 70s. If at the time of annexation a property owner owned 3 lots consecutive that were 25 foot in width, currently our ordinance would allow that property owner to build a residence, provided they'd have to marry all 3 lots together to get 75 feet of frontage. Our ordinance would also make it illegal for that property owner to lop off a 25-foot lot and sell it to their neighbor and just have their house on their 50-foot lot. Simply put, I'm confident the restrictions that we currently have, they couldn't survive a legal challenge if anyone took Watertown to task. So the Plan Commission directed me to draft the ordinance that's before you to remove those limitations. In my profession, we call them restraints on alienation, and when you read the language, the text of that ordinance, they're there. So removing those restraints would allow property owners more flexibility in what they can do in their property, and also give them the rights that they should have. So if you have questions tonight or before second reading, please let me know. But after visiting at length with the Plan Commission about these issues that are embodied in that ordinance, they directed that we make these revisions that are before you, and I confess apology for not having it piggyback to the ordinance Sarah just introduced, but there just wasn't time.
Councilman, any questions to Stanton? If not, then agenda item number 11, consideration of master development agreement with Watertown Development Company and Glacial Lakes Energy. I would like to move that to later on in our meeting after the executive session. I would like to go on now to agenda item number 12 as a motion to approve the write-off of uncollectible ambulance accounts receivable. And Tracy?
Thank you. You should find in your agenda packet a list of ambulance accounts that are presented tonight as uncollectible and have been turned over to the Credit Bureau for collection. Council members might recall that at our most recent meeting, a new policy was established providing for the write-off of such accounts in this manner. So if you have any questions, I'd try to answer them. Otherwise, I would ask for your approval to write off these accounts.
Is there a motion to approve the writing off of those collectible ambulance accounts?
So moved.
So moved by Alderman Giselbeck. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Solberg. Any questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Agenda item number 13 is a motion to approve the business license applications for Andrew Stemwhittle, a gas fitter, for $25, and Josh Buckland, a gas fitter, for $25. Is there a motion to approve those business licenses? So moved by Alderman Heller. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Meisenheimer. Any questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 14 is an authorization to apply for wetlands easement with Army Corps of Engineers Regulatory Office. And Herb?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Last spring, as part of the environmental assessment process for the airport runway project, the city was required to mitigate two wetlands on the airport property. I discussed the issue at that point in time with the Public Works Committee, and the committee directed or gave staff direction to look out in Hampton Industrial Park, just off of South Broadway. There's a 100-year floodplain area that's unusable for any other type of development, which seemed to be an appropriate location to do such wetlands mitigation. The requirement was that the wetlands selected would need to be at least 10,000 feet away from the airport. We'd have to mitigate at a 2-to-1 ratio, and the amount of wetlands we were mitigating at the airport was about 1.5 acres. The Watertown Development Corporation agreed with us that this was an appropriate location. Other wetlands had been mitigated out in the area, and in fact, what we did, we attached the wetlands we're talking about to one that already exists and just expanded it. Many months have passed since we had those discussions, obviously. In fact, the work's been done, and the new wetlands has been created. You probably observed them if you drove up or down South Broadway. And the reason I'm here tonight is to get the council's authorization to dedicate the area where we've created this wetlands to create a permanent wetlands easement. That's a Corps of Engineers requirement in order to satisfy the various regulatory agencies involved in the environmental process. Attached at the back of your package is a copy of the legal description and a diagram of the area we're talking about. Also attached is some restrictive language that will have to be part of the deed restriction that we create. I'll briefly highlight a couple of the items. Be no removal, destruction, cutting, trimming, mowing, alteration, or spraying with biocides, insecticides, or pesticides of any vegetation on the property, although we can comply with state and federal regulations for noxious weed control and mosquito control. No agricultural, commercial, or industrial activity undertaken or allowed on the property. No grazing of any livestock. No filling, excavating, dredging, milling, or drilling. No removal of topsoil, sand, gravel, etc. on the property. No construction or placing of buildings, mobile homes, signs, etc. No operation of all-terrain vehicles other than motorized vehicles that might be required to be used for noxious weed control, mosquito control, or refuse collection. As you see, it's a wetlands. It'll stay a wetlands. The only way it could change from being a wetlands is if we went back through the same process that we embarked on earlier in the year to do that. So at this point in time, I'd request a authorization for the mayor and finance officer to sign a deed restriction for the wetlands area, which will be submitted to the Corps of Engineers to be included in the wetlands mitigation file.
Is there a motion, please? So moved by Alderman Johnson. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Alderman Giselbeck. Any questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Next, we move on to the open. And if you refer to your items on the open agenda, we'll begin with number 1. Authorization for the mayor to sign an agreement with Earth Tech Incorporated to conduct a wastewater pH and alkalinity study for a fee of $9,900. Mike Berger.
Thank you, Mayor Fox, members of the council. We noted an effluent pH of 6.99 for November while completing the November discharge monitoring report. And that same day, staff reported an effluent pH of 6.88 for December 11th. The minimum pH required under our permit is 6.5. Noting the lower pH values, we reviewed data and identified a correlating decline in effluent alkalinity. And as you're probably aware, there's a direct relationship between alkalinity and pH. A high alkalinity is associated with a pH and vice versa. So we expect the declining pH to be associated with the declining alkalinity. And then since most of our industries discharge a higher pH, we contacted municipal utility water department to inquire about their the alkalinity values of the water that they discharge into our potable water system. And what we found out is that the lake plant that they just are retiring had a higher alkalinity in the 200 to 220 part per million range, and the town plant that they're now operating runs down around 70 and at times even lower. So with this information, I recommended at the December 12th Public Works Committee last week to take immediate action and request the assistance of Earth Tech, formerly Rust, the facility that designed our wastewater treatment facility, to review the data and recommend alternatives regarding short-term options for immediate pH control. I believe it's necessary to evaluate the need for short-term pH control to maintain compliance, while we also look at long-term pH control and the effects it might have on other processes. So in summary tonight, I'd like to request permission for the mayor to sign this agreement with Earth Tech to evaluate modifications for temporary chemical feed facilities to improve performance and provide technical information to assist us in implementing immediate short-term pH control to sustain compliance with our surface water discharge permit. And as mentioned, the amount of the agreement is $9,900. It's based on time and material and requires prior written approval to exceed that amount. Now, this is something we've not budgeted for because it was unforeseen, but we do have unexpended funds in the budget and sufficient cash reserves. So again, I would request permission for the mayor to sign this agreement for short-term services, and also point out that once we implement any short-term recommendation they come up with, we'll be back with a request for another agreement estimated to be at about $16,700 to evaluate long-term modifications, including capital outlay costs, chemical costs, and O&M concerns.
And that was with the Public Works Committee recommendation for approval too, wasn't it,
Yes,
Mike?
this passed the Public Works Committee.
Is there a motion then to authorize the agreement with Earth Tech? So moved by Alderman Garnos. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Alderwoman York. Any questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mike. Item number 2 on the open agenda, authorization for the mayor to sign an agreement with New World Systems for field reporting software in the amount of $105,500. Chief Vitek.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and City Council members. I come before you tonight. You'll recall that you approved a capital improvement project for the totaling the amount of $141,000, $450 for the mobile data computers that we're placing in the patrol cars. That's a two-pronged project. One involves the software. The other half of that involves the hardware. Tonight I'm coming before you requesting permission to have the mayor and our finance director to sign that agreement with New World, who is also who we have the CAD with, and our records management system. So this is coming together very nicely, and we're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Is there a motion then to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement with New World Systems for field reporting? Motion by Alderman Giselbeck. Is there a second? Second by Alderwoman Walder. Any questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Chief Vitek. Item number 3 on the open agenda is authorization to fill the third firefighter EMT position in 2007. Tracy?
Thank you. The council members will recall that at budget time this last fall, when the 2007 budget was adopted, we had appropriated money to hire fill 5 new full-time firefighter EMT positions, and 3 of those 5 positions it was anticipated would be funded with federal grant funds through the SAFER program. And just recently we learned that the grant application, at least for this year, was not successful. So that leaves us, at least our initial thought was that there would be 3 of those 5 positions that would not have funding available. And the request before you tonight is to authorize a third position so that one position, one full-time firefighter EMT could be added to each of the 3 shifts. And in spite of the loss of the grant funding, the council members might also recall that since adoption of the budget, you did approve a rate increase, a mileage rate increase for the ambulance that is anticipated to generate upwards of $20,000 of additional revenues next year that were not programmed into the budget. So I'm comfortable that we would have sufficient funds in the general fund without the grant to fund 3 out of the 5 positions. And with that, I guess I'll stop and try to answer any questions that you might have in that regard.
Is there a motion then to authorize the third firefighter EMT position? So moved by Alderman Solberg, seconded by Alderman Walder. Any further questions or discussion for Tracy?
Tracy, how was that? We were going to have, how many were going to be funded out of the grant?
Well, it would have been approximately three out of the
that's what I
five. The positions actually run about $50,000 apiece by the time you add in all the benefits and workers' comp insurance. So with the additional of approximately $20,000 of ambulance revenues, it really leaves us about $100,000 short, or those two positions that we would not be
So
filling.
actually, there's going to be 3 new positions instead of 5.
Correct.
And the city will be funding all 3 of those without
That's
the
correct.
grant.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 4, which isn't on your open agenda, is kind of an update on the flood insurance. And Alderman Johnson, please.
It's been about 90 days, I think, since FEMA indicated they were taking public comments, and we had some discussion about potentially the new flood map taking effect towards the end of January. Last couple of weeks, I've been getting a number of phone calls from people who are concerned about it, worried, and wanting to know what to do. And so I've asked Rick Schlechter to give us a quick update on where we're at.
Yes, thank you. As it turns out, we've had a rather timely discussion with representatives of FEMA and the division, South Dakota's Division of Emergency Management, just the 12th of this month, as it turns out. What we're anticipating, what we've learned in that verbal conversation, is that around the first of the year of 2007, the city will receive a letter called the Letter of Final Determination from FEMA. What that's going to say briefly is that the preliminary maps that we've come to know over the last year, you recall that we received those December 30th of 2005. Those preliminary maps will become final effective within about a 6-month time frame from the date of that letter. So when we receive that letter, that is the Letter of Final Determination, that will signal the beginning of a 6-month compliance period. And during that 6 months is when the city will retool its current flood damage prevention ordinance, adopting the preliminary digital flood insurance rate maps as our new effective and official firm maps. So within approximately 6.5 months from today's date.
So we've got a little breathing room.
A little bit more than we had originally anticipated. Yes, I think our community was kind of prepared for needing to be in a certain position by about now or shortly after the first of the year, and it seems like we're going to have till end of June or so.
Based on the conversations I've had with a number of people, I would suggest that we, sometime in January or thereabouts, get together a public information campaign, frequently asked questions type of information that's available at City Hall that we can get out on our website, so that there's some place that people can go, because I know there are a number of insurance agents that are saying different things, and not everybody is quite on the same page, and I think we need to help get everybody on the same page in that time frame.
You'll take care of that for us, Rick?
We'll work on it.
All right,
Yep.
thank you. The council members have any questions? If not, then we'll move to item number 5 on the agenda. Alderman Johnson would like to discuss some issues in regards to illegal parking near the ponds.
On the north of 3rd Avenue, the gravel pond over by the river, near where we have the Upper Big Sioux office and the Terry Redland Freshwater Institute office, it was brought to my attention today by Chad Faust, who's our director of the Freshwater Institute, that a number of people are driving their cars out right down onto the bank. In fact, I drove by there the other day and saw 3 cars that had pulled down the hill and were parked right on the edge of the bank. And those banks are fairly fragile, and damage is occurring to them. Most of the activity that is going on right now is related to ice skating. That may be a separate discussion of our comfort level with ice skating occurring on that pond that's probably 20 feet deep. But there has been a fair amount of ice skating going on out there. And Chad spoke the other day with a gentleman who had a SUV down there, and Chad was given a rude I'm staying here and that's the way it is. And so Chad just kind of walked away at that point. But I think at worst, you know, we need to keep everybody out of there. We in the summertime, people have been parking up on the hill by the river on the grass. We've not developed that park yet. Or it's not even in the park system yet. But it's an attractive area. I think we need to get some signs out there that say no vehicles past a certain point. We need to protect that resource and protect our residents as well. So.
Okay. Any council members have any comments or questions?
I do know the ice arena has a lot of open skating for the kids, so they really don't need to be on a dangerous pond.
Like Brad said, it's still pretty deep, very deep water there. So, and of course, you know, as far as if we don't say anything, there's just going to get worse as far as there's going to be more cars going down there and parking on there because we haven't said that they can't do it. Hello. So with that being said, why hopefully Jennifer can get that out to in the newspaper. Wake up, Jennifer.
Mayor,
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
before you move away from this item, just a question, because I don't know the answer. That area that you're referring to, Brad, is that under the jurisdiction of the Park and Rec Board? Oh, it's not.
No,
I
the city purchased that. We have not. It's the Park and Rec Board has not been approached at this point to take that over. Perhaps you know that's part of an area that we're looking at to tie in with the future environmental education center with the zoo and over the course of the next year, I think there will be some more planning that's done in relation to that. But in the meantime, I just believe we need to keep the vehicles as far away from the edge of that water as possible.
Chief Vitek, would there be any possibility that there could be some extra patrols done in that 3rd Avenue area where they are parking?
Yes, sir, we could do that. I guess one of the things I would ask Stanton, though, push come to shove, and we encounter the same kind of obstinance, wherein do we lie?
Well, Chief, I was thumbing through Title 18 or 19. I'm sorry, 1904, just before you came up here and before I opened my mouth. But we do have the authority under our ordinance, the inherent authority. If it's public property, we can post a sign that prohibits parking in certain areas. So I think certainly increased patrol would be a plus. But if you post a sign prohibiting conduct or regulating conduct, and someone is seen parking beyond this point or whatever the sign would say, they would be subject to an ordinance violation and a citation. Unlike it wouldn't be like a parking ticket; it would be more like a moving violation, just like a speeding citation or rolling through a stop sign.
So we should have some signs made up as soon as possible and the property posted, Stanton?
Well, I confess I don't know
Okay.
what the police department make a recommendation to street. I don't know just what words we'd use, but we can certainly come up with appropriate signing that would, pass muster with the official traffic control device
Okay.
sign requirements.
We'll take
Something
care of that.
similar to what Game Fish and Parks does at their public hunting areas. No vehicular traffic beyond this point.
We'll certainly
period.
do it. We can do that.
Mayor, the chief, and I will get together and we'll direct Mike Wright to get what we need out there.
Thank you, Herb. Thank you, Chief Vitek. Under number 16, old business, item A is a proposed resolution of necessity for the 2007 street improvement project number 0701-C, and we'll need to vote as far as whether to proceed or not to proceed. And Dave?
Good evening. As you recall, at the previous meeting, this action was delayed on this particular project for the residents to come to some type of an agreement as far as what their feelings are concerning the project. Since that time, we received a petition opposing the proceeding with the surfacing of this alley, and it was signed by people representing 57.8% of the property fronting the alley. So it's kind of a moot point as far as whether you decide to approve the resolution or not, because if the resolution is approved, this petition will automatically kill the project anyway, so.
We'll make it official. Is there a motion to vote that the council not proceed?
So moved.
So moved by Alderman Heller. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman York. Any further questions or discussion?
Just that everyone here knows that that's a problem alley up there. And I would hope somewhere along the line, Dave, that our city can help those people up there and see if we can't come to some real good conclusion and get that taken care of.
Any other questions or comments? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Any other old business to come before the council? If not, we'll move on to new business. Is there any new business to come before the council? Item number 18, liaison member reports. Are there any reports to mention? Nancy, what about the safety meeting?
Safety committee meeting has been canceled for tomorrow morning. There was only one agenda item on there. It was kind of routine business, and we decided to just put that on with the January safety committee meeting, unless there's any objections or from the council. Do you object, George?
Herb, okay. And then the Public Works meeting, Herb, do you have a comment on that?
There will be no Public Works Committee meeting on December 26th. Being the day after Christmas, we figured everybody would like to probably do something different.
Thank you, Herb.
I can tell who really works around here. There will be a finance committee meeting tomorrow afternoon at 1:30 upstairs in the meeting room. The committee did decide at their last meeting to change their regular meeting time, so that'll be 1:30 tomorrow instead of our previously usual time of 4:15.
Thank you, Tracy.
I have two more items, if I might, just very quickly.
Yes.
Each of you should have in front of you a CD with the city's 2007 budget document on it. This is what you will get from now on for instead of the thick book that you used to get. If you have any questions on how to open it, access it, maneuver within it, please feel free to come and talk to us. We're having a little bit of training tomorrow morning, in fact, for department heads and other staff that will be using that document in the future. So the last thing I'd like to mention to council members specifically, you should have received an email from my office regarding the employee flexible benefit plan. Council members and all elected officials are eligible to participate in that. If you have any interest in learning more about that, please feel free to stop by the finance department, and we'll see if we can answer your questions. Regardless of whether you intend to participate or not, we do need to have you sign an election, either participating or not participating. So that is something that we require of all eligible employees. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. We will need to go in executive session, so if I could have a motion to go in executive session. So moved by Alderman Heller, seconded by Alderman Solberg. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We'll go into executive session. When we come out of executive session, we will handle agenda item number 11. Item number 11, which is consideration of the master development agreement with Watertown Development Company and Glacial Lakes Energy. Craig Atkins, please.
Thank you, Mayor Fox. You've all probably seen a copy of the letter that we presented to Glacial Lakes Energy in relation to the planned expansion. They're currently planning a 50 million gallon expansion. It'll be $50 million in capital investment and creating additional 50 jobs. And tonight we're here to ask you to authorize the development company and the city to enter into a master development agreement with Glacial Lakes that will allow us to transfer approximately 1.6 acres of land at a value of about $20,125. And additionally, we would request to provide them with a sales tax rebate for approximately $79,875 as part of the project and the expansion project. In exchange for that, Glacial Lakes Energy will also replat the property once the property transactions are complete. This is an important project to the community. Glacial Lakes has been a tremendous partner in relation to economic growth, and this expansion is going to result in the addition of some very good paying jobs. Their average salary is somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000 a year. So with that, I would end my comments and answer any questions that any of you may have.
We're looking at approximately what? How many jobs, Craig, do you think?
Approximately 12 that we've made them commit to in relation to the agreement. But I would suspect that if you talk to them, there have been more jobs added in the interim. So, you may end up with 15 to 18 of these high-paying jobs.
I see. Council members, any questions at all to Craig? If not, then is there a motion then to proceed with a master development agreement with Watertown Development Company and Group by Alderman Garnos? Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Meisenheimer. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have a motion to adjourn. So moved by Alderman Johnson, seconded by Alderwoman Walder. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Merry Christmas.